Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Govs on the Go Alumni Edition, a new podcast featuring alumni from the College of Arts and Letters here at Austin Peay State University. My name is Dr. Hoon. I'm the Dean of the college. I'm also the host of the podcast. Today, I'm talking with Diana Pelham from the class of 2007. Diana majored in English with minors in both education and leadership. And we are so glad to have you on the podcast, Diana.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm loving it.
So let's, before we get into your story, let's give everybody a life update. Where are you? What's going on?
So right now, well, thank you for asking me. I'm in Germantown. I live in Nashville, Tennessee, Germantown, and I'm currently the vice president of leadership giving over at Tennessee Performing Arts Center. Married for about 15 years now, actually a little over 15 years now. And I'm still close to Clarksville, so I'm able to make it over there probably at least once a month to see my family.
Nice. Very good. Okay, well, let's talk about your family, because I think that of the things that when I'm kind of doing my research, I always think it's interesting to find out the things that impact a young person and shape them along the way. And obviously, one of the first things you mentioned were your family and growing up here in Clarksville. I think it's interesting that you mentioned both your sister and your brother were influential. Why is that?
Yes, thank you for touching on that a little bit. And of course, everybody's got a very, I think, unique story. And sometimes when I start talking about my family, I go, oh, well, you know, everybody's family, my family is no more quote unquote special for sure than anybody else's family. We might be a little nuttier, that's for sure. But I think I did come from a slightly unique situation in the fact that my sister and my brother both are on average about 20 years older than me. And I definitely came as the quote unquote blessing baby. We'll see about that, but I was not planned. And so they grew up around me, and I felt like I had growing up three sets of parents. But you know, when my sister and I and my brother and I, especially when we talk, and the contrast of how I was raised versus how they were raised, even by my parents. I think I think I was really fortunate in the fact that not only were they there and they've kind of been through a lot themselves and they had a different focus with me, but also they had an interest in my well-being too, more so than an average sibling, I guess you would say. And so they both taught me very different things, especially early on. And I just now look back on that really truly as a blessing of a lot of, I think, characteristics that I have now that have really served me well now, I really owe to them, because I think they really worked hard to instill those things in me when my parents, we will get into it, but they were very blue collar workers and they were older and they did amazing job raising me. But I think those nuanced characteristics were definitely owed to my siblings.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you recognize the support system that has influenced you along the way, because we can't do this on our own, and so especially early on, you're finding people that believe in you, support you, give you confidence, encouragement, and that's also important to where you can be as a young person. And I think that you also mentioned that, for instance, your mom was also really wanted to make sure you did academically well.
She did. I remember, this is a goofy story. And apparently too, so my parents, they married very young. And so in these days, they had me when they were 40, which it's not young, but at the same time, lots of people are waiting longer to have children, their first child. But they had my sister at 17, and then my brother at 18, 19. And then, so they kind of they were very young. So you can imagine when you're young, you're raising kids, there's a certain mindset there probably. And then down 20 something years down the road, you have a different mindset. And so, yes, my mother, she did not graduate high school. She went back and got her GED, and I think she actually was extremely intelligent. But I remember one specific time I was in high school And she literally told me, you have to get a scholarship and pay for yourself to go to college, or you're working at McDonald's. I was like, okay, sounds like a plan to me. So it was just, it's just like, she knew we had to go and get a better education. And so I think those types of things she learned over the course of 20 years. I don't want you to be doing what I'm doing. I want you to be able to take care of yourself properly. And so I'm hoping that, they're proud of, at least in our small little world, that they're happy of where we're landing at the moment. So,
well, I'm sure they are. I mean, how could they not be of you? I mean, that's awesome. And one of the other things that I thought was really cool is you talked about the importance of music in your early development. And could you tell everybody what, when you mentioned that, what were you talking about?
Yes, thank you. I will definitely try to expound a little bit. Yeah, music was extremely prevalent in our household, mainly because my family just loved it. It's ironic because we did not listen to country music at all. We did not do country. We did pretty much everything else. My family was far, and now I am probably too much a huge fan of Elvis. So we listen to Elvis all the time, not just your basics. Like I'm in the vault. I know all the things about Elvis, so I'm like mega fan. And my brother actually is a very gifted musician himself. Amazing guitar player. If you are local in Clarksville, there's a lot of people who, especially obviously in his age range, that I come across and they're like, oh, Wayne Wooten's your brother? Because he could play the guitar ridiculous. And so he actually had his own band when he was younger, and so I just kind of grew up doing that, and then I just started singing. And I'll once again owe my sister and my mother. They just picked up on it, I guess because I was just loud as a kid. And we started singing, obviously, gospel in church, and I was actually singing with my niece. And so my niece is my sister's daughter, and so we grew up like sisters, actually, more so. And we sang duets from in our churches. We started just being asked to come sing in local churches all around, even going as far as Kentucky, and a couple other southern states, and a lot of African American churches. We had a certain style. I think that for being young, when I say young, we were 8 or 9 years old, was a little bit different. And so it just kind of really nourished a love of music and singing for me. And so that plays into my life later down the road, but singing and music was a big part of my life.
Well, that's awesome. And I have to just take a side route here. Also a big Elvis fan growing up because of my mom. And so I grew up watching all of his movies and listening to all of his music all the time. So, I
already love you. I knew I was going to like you for a reason. Anybody who talks anything negative, I'm like, I don't get on my crap list because I don't want to hear it.
So when you're in high school, what kind of things were you interested in doing? And did it give any indication? I mean, you still must have had some love of music going on.
Yes. So when I was in middle school, actually, and once again, it's like my family, they never were the pushers, if that makes sense. I think it's just that's a characteristic I continue to work on today, is to be more fearless and to be more bold. Sometimes you don't want to always second guess, but we were just very, ultimately, especially to the public, we focused on kindness, but a little bit of passivity, I guess you would say. But when I was in middle school, actually at the local Roxy Theater, there was a long production. It was like a 3-week production of Annie. And so actually my mother encouraged me to go try out, and I've never done any type of theater before in my life. And they hired me. They chose me. They casted me to be this part that it was like her name was CG in the play, and we had quite a few lines, but also it was a solo singing piece. So that kind of really garnered not only self-discipline, but the love for music again in theater. And then just when I was in high school, weirdly enough, I did not do chorus. I did not do anything like that. I kind of went a different direction. I went into sports. I went into every other club you could possibly think of. But I did not do music a lot. So it actually kind of dropped weirdly, ironically enough, I guess you would say, in high school, and it picked back up in college.
Wow, that is interesting. And so then, you decided to come to Austin Peay.
Yes.
And so, what was your initial major?
And let me tell you a little bit about Austin Peay. I'm going to be very honest. Because I grew up in Clarksville, so I'm like, okay, Austin Peay in my backyard. My mother was dead set on me going to Austin Peay. And I would get some like mail, everybody gets the mail of every other college around, and I was kind of fantasizing about going somewhere else. And she started taking my mail and be like, nope, you're shutting it down. And I was like, okay, fine.
I like your mom.
It's hilarious. I mean, it's very, very true story. And at the time I wasn't a happy camper. And now honestly, she had a lot more. She was a mom for a reason. She saw more than I did. And I wound up getting a full scholarship to Austin Peay. So I didn't have to, I graduated with zero debt.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So it was amazing there. That was a blessing really in itself. And I immediately jumped into it and I fell in love with Austin Peay. My major was English. So to answer, long story short, my major was English. And I fell in love with English and literature, especially when I was in high school.
Now, before we get into some of the classes, I want to talk about, you were also a very active student. You found ways to be involved in other groups. You were part of a sorority. You were involved in student government leadership. So let's talk a little bit about that. Why again, this was probably part of your personal growth.
So thank you for asking. I was always involved in everything in high school. However, I think I did not want high school to be I wanted to break away from high school. I wanted to kind of, it was one of those weird things you look back on and everybody kind of has hopefully a similar experience when you go to college. Even though I was local, I felt like I got the full college experience in being involved, but also being able to be confident and growing in who you are really, and not being afraid of what other people think or trying to impress in a certain way or being scared of whatever reason. And I immediately joined Chi Omega. That was my first move there. And also I was part of the President's Emerging Leaders program. I believe you all still have that there, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of really what sealed the deal with Austin Peay and just my trajectory, I think, was Pelham. And Chi Omega, eventually I wound up being president of that sorority. And honestly, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. My best friends came out of that experience. And also it opens up doors and networks and relationships. It also actually, especially at Austin Peay, I cannot speak to every other university, obviously, but for the sorority piece of it, it really made you keep your academics in order. You really, for our sorority, we had certain standards. You wanted to be known as a certain reputation as far as having a high caliber standard there. And that included academics as well. So I just kind of immediately jumped in and I immediately fell in love with all of my classes, to be honest. I was a nerd.
That's good. So, before we move on the Chi Omega, I just think that it is a special benefit to a young person to try to join something like that, because the benefits you will have for the rest of your life, these relationships that you built with people during those few years that you're together, those, as you said, the networking opportunities and early on, you're building, again, things that you could put together in your portfolio and your resume that says, you've taken these leadership opportunities and ran with it.
You're very correct. And go back to Chi Omega, I forget, actually, I kind of half owe my Chi Omega interest and help with that with my sister-in-law, who is still local in Clarksville. Her name is Sandy Wooten. And she's still pretty active with the alumni group, both in Austin Peay and in Chi Omega. And so she kind of actually opened that door of even saying, hey, I was part of this. She was an alum and I think that you would be interested. And I was. So.
Okay. And one other route off before we get to the classes, you happen to meet somebody special there.
Yeah.
How did that happen? I always like to hear this story.
Oh gosh. Well, I'll try to, I always preface like, it's not that exciting,
Okay.
but it is kind of funny just because, I actually met Zach he was in President's Emerging Leaders as well. But he was 1 year ahead of me. And there was like, it was like our freshman dinner or whatever they have there to kind of introduce the whole Pelt classes together. And he sat next to me and I was like, he's so cute. He has zero personality. I was like, this dude doesn't talk. I was like, whatever. And then I saw him and got to know, because he was actually in a fraternity. And then this was my freshman year, his sophomore year. And he was running for student government president. And he came and spoke, and I got to know him a little bit throughout the year, but nothing special. I just thought he was cute, but his personality wasn't fabulous in my opinion at the time. And then he ran, and I personally did not vote for him. I told him that. I was like, I didn't vote for you because you had no experience. I'm not going to vote for somebody just because I thought they were good looking. But he won, so who thunk it? You can see what I know. But then we actually kind of started dating, and then we quit dating. And then when he was actually in his first year of president, I was the executive assistant to the president, and I was overseeing a homecoming parade. You do the homecoming parade still. And we were actually arguing about something. And that's when he asked me on a date. And then to date again, and the rest was history. So we started our relationship in an argument. Maybe we'll end it in an argument, but it's working so far.
That is the funniest story. And the fact that, would you vote for him today? I suppose you would.
I would definitely vote for him today. I know now he's got a shining personality, and he's got the smarts to boot. So I will vote for him. I was the wrong one on that one, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk a little bit about some of the classes that you enjoy taking. What do you remember from your professors and taking some of the classes?
I loved my literature classes. Loved them. I can't believe how much I did enjoy them, because I was also having fun in college. But I never skipped a class. I remember, well, first of all, Dr. Wadia, I fell in love with Shakespeare because of him. I still get to see him once in a while because he'll come to TPAC. And so I'll sneak him into the donor lounge, but because you were special, you were coming in here. And Dr. Wadia was phenomenal. He made me interpret Shakespeare in a different way that when you're in high school, you're just reading through the stuff sometimes, and you don't have the time for it. I fell in love with American literature when I was in high school. I had a phenomenal teacher at Rossview. And so then, therefore, that just kind of translated over into the American literature classes I took at Austin Peay. And Dr. Stephen Ryan, he might be retired now. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know him.
I think he probably retired. I knew he was getting semi-close to retiring there, but he was a phenomenal literature professor as well. I loved the choice of literature that we read, and he was tough. I'm not going to lie. Him and Dr. Wadia both were not easy. They really held you to a standard. And I think that's why I really enjoyed it. And maybe I wanted to meet them to the challenge, is because they really did kind of push you. It wasn't just read these pages, take a quiz, go, and made you think. I even loved my American history class. Oh, I can't remember his name. Maybe Dr. Oh, crap. I need to remember that. But I don't know why he made it. His class, I had an American history class. I took him 2 or 3 different times. And that's another thing too. It was the beauty with Austin Peay is Dr. Wadia I had him for 2 classes, but I was able to take a couple of the professors that I really enjoyed more than once. Mm-hmm. And that was really lovely. There was one specific class, I can't remember the name of the class, but it was really just kind of digging deeper into American literature during a certain time period. And I was able to take that with Dr. Ryan. And it just completely just opened my mind up to loving the meaning behind literature, and it also garnered an appreciation for poetry that I did not care about before, and just understanding and you being able to actually make yourself an argument when you're writing an essay, for example, and you're writing a piece about this section of Merchant of Venice and Shakespeare, for example. You have the right to interpret it as you wish, and I think that's what the author's intent was. But as long as you can back it up, that was kind of the fun part, is you can back it up and it makes sense, and you can compile a compelling argument. You're not wrong. and that's the beauty, I think, of the arts in general too, is it's up for interpretation, but you just have to prove that you're really making an effort to understand and apply it in a certain way that is meaningful for you. And so that's what Dr. Wadia, Dr. Ryan, they both just really stick out in my mind as two professors who really made me think in that direction.
And now 15 years later or so, I'm wondering, those writing skills that you had, that you were working on at that period of time, the critical thinking skills, the writing skills, and not really sure how you were going to apply them in whatever career that you may, even at that period of time, were thinking about. I'm sure that those are things that you're using in your tool belt almost every day.
It is. And sometimes I feel like I need to sharpen it because we're moving at such a fast pace here over at TPAC. But yes, all of those, everything that I've been able to learn, I'm going to just chunk out Austin Peay, for example. It's so interesting how life circles you back around. Never in a million years would I've ever thought I would be asking people for money and enjoy it. I would be like, no, that sounds like torture. No, thank you. I'm passive. Remember, like I don't want confrontation. No, thank you. But it's so different than what you imagine. And just to your point, the relationship piece is absolutely huge. And I was really able to grow into myself socially and to just embrace who I am, which is somebody who I love to never meet a stranger. I really, truly do. And to have a genuine love for people in general can actually, you can actually make a career out of that. And then partner that with what literature and writing. And now I've had the fortune, because when we were younger, we didn't, but my husband and I, we love to travel, to understand the culture piece of that, is to understand the why and understand different perspectives. You get to understand people in a different way. You just have a genuine appreciation for people's personalities and where they're coming from. And that really helps with understanding, I guess what they say now is what SEI. And I'm like, I wish there was a class in that. It would have been better than math for me, but a social emotional intelligence there that I think Austin Peay, my experiences there really helped nourish that. I really think it did. And so, yes, looking at my whole path, which it's been a lot so far, but I've really kind of found my sweet spot the past decade or so in the profession of development. It's really interesting how all of these experiences have culminated together to hopefully manifest itself into something that I really love and I wind up being pretty good at.
Yeah. And that's when I hope our students that are watching this realize that, along the way, when we graduate and we leave, we're going to have little twists and turns, as you've had, because when you left here, you became a teacher for a few years.
Yes, that was my intention, to be a teacher for the next 35 years.
Yeah, for the next 35, but
no, I was like, nope.
And but that just says that you find out that there's a different route for you somewhere in life.
Correct. And I wish, hindsight, looking back, that I wasn't so at the time making the moves. I'm never afraid to make a move. I'm never afraid to step into a door of opportunity. That's one thing. I'm like, I don't care. Let's do it. Then when I'm in there, I'm like, what? What's happening? But yeah, you're so correct. And that's something that's probably a small piece of advice I'm sure the students know, is don't pigeonhole yourself. Pick whatever major, even if you have an intention, like, I want to be a nurse. Nurse is a very specific, concentration that you have to have a specific degree in that in order to do nursing. I cannot turn around tomorrow and go, I think I want to go to nursing, and then just bebop into a clinic and say, will you hire me because I have a degree? But even if you go and say, for all intents and purposes, I want to be a nurse, and then you graduate and you go, wait a minute, this is not for me. You have still a lot of opportunity, and your skill sets can translate over into other realms that you are probably not even thinking of at the moment.
Absolutely. And that's what, after you leave teaching, you actually pursue the music career a little bit. How was that?
Yeah. So talk about where it all came back around. It was a fluke too. And looking back at still, I'm like, how did that happen, or why did that happen? But it happened for a reason, and I don't regret 1 minute of it. Even if it was to pull me out of where I was to get us to where we are today. But on our honeymoon, Zach and I were married in 2007. I was actually approached, and this also had something to do with my brother, who on a whim, because he's the last person to take initiative on something, he decided to put like a recording of me singing into a man who was producing songs mailbox. That's like old school. These days that didn't happen. And he called while I was on our honeymoon and asked if I wanted to meet. So long story short, we recorded an album with him. And then that kind of catapulted into a singing career that while I was teaching, I was recording the album. I was meeting songwriters that actually are relevant today, starting to get in those circles pretty quickly that I was not even really prepared for. But it was scary, to be honest. It was very scary. It was super exciting, but scary all at the same time. It was also during a recession. And it was interesting what was going on in the music industry at the time. They didn't know what they were doing with CDs. Gosh, it's aging me big time. The CDs were a thing. And then also streaming music was coming into play. They didn't know how the old way of doing record deals, how I would quote unquote would have gotten signed was completely changing. We're completely in a crux. They were really strapped for cash. Also, female artists were not being signed at all. But at the same time, I was still doing it. And I was playing everywhere downtown. I was playing everywhere from Tootsie's to rando places in Kentucky and Alabama to Rivers and Spires in Clarksville. So I was kind of doing it while I was teaching. And then my third year of teaching, my husband actually got a job opportunity because we both were on a career, like, we got to do something different. We were living in McMinnville at the time, and we just wanted something more for ourselves. And we had to take a risk, and I will credit my husband for that. He encouraged me to do something different when I was a little bit too nervous to be honest, because I could have taught and become a principal and had that life easily, and it would have been a good life. But we made a move to Springfield, Tennessee, and we're completely broke for like a year to 2 years by choice. He started a new career path, which wound up being wonderful for him. And I was doing music full time.
So then how did you get involved with the YMCA? Because that was the next thing that sort of you started also becoming involved with was it Robertson County YMCA?
Yes. So Springfield, thank you for asking. Moved there. We're actually renting a place in a local little next spot called Ridgetop, where we're like barely making the bills work. And me being the way I am, like not feeling like I'm contributing, was just a mental thing just for students out there. Like it's killer when you are a productive type of person. And I'm sure most of your students want to produce. It was tough. Looking back, that's something I wish I would have just taken in stride a lot more and understood the big picture instead of worrying to death about how can I contribute a little bit. But, when you're 20 at the time, 25 years old, it was, you're young. We were married pretty young these days comparatively. But in Robertson County, I started going to the Y there. They had a sliding scale. They had like financial aid, and I wanted to go and exercise. And that's where my husband's first job offer was. He was with an insurance company, Farm Bureau. They're a great company. Got to start there. And I noticed I really enjoyed the people who were working there. That county, that town is just still really sweet to my heart because they were really welcoming to us when we weren't necessarily locals there. But they had a part-time job for a development coordinator. I had no clue what a development coordinator was, but it was like a part-time job. It required a bachelor's degree. And I was like, okay, it requires a bachelor's degree. Who knows? Why not? I feel like I've got a little bit of something to distract me. And I feel like I'm at the time, like contributing a little bit. It was an hourly wage to the household. And then that was in the beginning of February of 2011. So I was still doing music, and I was still doing that. And then within a year, I was actually asked to be a full-time coordinator, and I was still doing music. And so the two fused and one won out. So here I am.
Well, that's, I have so much love for the YMCA's in the United States. My wife ended up very similar, going part-time and eventually got involved full-time, and she worked there
Really?
for over 20 years.
Really?
And
What did she do,
yeah,
if you don't mind me asking?
she worked at the front desk, and so she trained employees, and
Membership.
just the purpose, the mission of the YMCA, how it helped so many families, and provided a safe place for people to get healthy. And so from all different ages. So I just can't say enough about how, and it looks to me from somebody from the outside watching your progression, is that you are sort of guided. There's the spirit pushing you in different areas. And this was an area that obviously you have found some success.
Yes, and it is such a wonderful. Thank you for saying that. You're very correct. It felt like we just did what for us. I mean, we are people. We are people of faith, and whatever your faith is, I mean, we had to walk on faith. Put it that way, because some of the decisions that we wound up making were almost not of our accord. And it did not make sense. When we moved to Springfield, it made no sense. While we were, to be very transparent, Zach's family, they were like, why? Why are you quitting this? Zach was actually overtaking and he has like 47 degrees. He didn't know what he wanted to do either. Side note, kids. My husband has two majors from Austin Peay. He has a major and two like minors in Austin Peay, a degree in accounting at Belmont. He was almost finished with his master's, decided to quit Belmont. He's like, I cannot do accounting anymore. So he's got touched on everything. But we had a life foundation built in McMinnville that to most people sounds idyllic. He overtook his family's very strong business. I was a teacher on track to be a principal if I wanted to be in the next 5 years. And we made a move. And for a while it was tough. But to your point, it kind of all roads lead to something, and who knows if we took the long way around or not. But I will owe the Y a lot too. Is they really in the development world, we all say, like, if you come from the YMCA, like, they train you right, because you do it all. You do it all. Your work ethic is there. I mean, you have to be relentless in that regard, but the mission is so strong that you want to do that. So I was there for, long story short, 8 years, almost 8 years. And I wound up being a regional development director.
So how did you get involved with TPAC then?
So once again, back to my family, my sister-in-law actually passed on. I was not looking, but I wasn't a place at the Y where at the time, now they do, but now at the time it was really my role and then the chief development officer. So there was nowhere really to grow, if that makes sense, if you wanted to still grow in that profession. And for anybody who doesn't understand what development is, most people are like, what is development? Now you can actually earn degrees in it. In college at the time, there was no such thing. But coming in, it's basically, you're in the fundraising nonprofit world. And at the time I wasn't looking, but my sister-in-law sent me a job description posting that was for director of corporate partnerships and relations for TPAC. And she knew I was kind of like a little bit antsy. And she was like, they sent this to me like on LinkedIn or whatever, but this looks like something you might be interested in. And when I read the job description, it felt like a dream job opportunity for me, because I also really enjoyed the corporate side of sponsorships with the YMCA. I just felt like there was like an untapped market for that. Mm-hmm. And I saw where, those relationships, it's almost like it was a fun balance of the mission, the heart, but also the business side of it. And so, and of course, TPAC is TPAC. I mean, it kind of, it's an institution here. It's has such meaning and such influence in not only our region, but our state. To have the opportunity, I just felt like, well, I've got to, I would regret not applying for this. Who knows what's going to happen? But let me apply. And for some crazy reason, they hired me.
Well, not so crazy, but besides again your background and your love of music, there still must have been a learning curve for you.
Oh, definitely. Yes, there was definitely a learning curve. And that's what I said. I go, I'll take on any opportunity. Like, don't, one piece of advice, always take the opportunity because it's going to lead to something good. But I did not know how much of a learning curve because I knew development, I knew relationships, but also it was a culture shock. If you are familiar at all with the YMCA culture, there's positives and challenges to every type of culture, right? But it's a very walking into a nonprofit culture of the feel good, the all heart, that kind of thing, warm and fuzzies. That's why at the time, especially TPAC was not. It was not. I mean, it's a sophisticated operation. It was at the time is extremely like it was just revenue driven, and I walked into a corporate feeling culture that I was not used to. On top of the fact, the learning of the arts, the performing arts world, and all of the nuances of Broadway and theater and ticketing and sponsorship and individual and how the seating even works. And it all ties in together. The marketing, communications, there's so many people in play. I was used to being able to say, you want to do that? Let's do it. I want to have a rooftop party on top of the downtown wild roof. Done. I have to do it, but I'm get to do it. No, everything you do is a ripple effect. And looking back now, I know, you got a Vanderbilt University, for example, their development team is of 200 people. They're a well-oiled machine, and that is very attractive for a lot of people. I feel like TPAC's almost a sweet spot for me now because it's more than just that. I don't, every little thing is on you. You've got a team. It's sophisticated. I love the arts. I think it's fun. I think the impact, the way it's changed my life is, I can go on and on about it, and they also have amazing arts education programs. I can get behind. So I got the heart piece of it, but also it is more sophisticated, quote unquote, in the fact that there's a lot at play there. And you still have, you have a lot of strategy. You have a lot of skills that if I wanted to go into for-profit tomorrow can be very easily transferable. And the relationships and networks that I've extremely quickly built since I've been just at TPAC are invaluable alone.
It must be so rewarding to see some of the success that you've seen, and also overcoming challenges, which is part of sort of the joy of running up a hill is when you get to the very top of it and you're able to see what you've been able to overcome.
You're so right. And it's so hard to look back. I'm sure everybody feels that way, especially for one who wants to always move forward. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, yesterday I was stressed out about something. There's always something. And that's what my husband always says is it's never going to end, Diana. Like you have to just take it one day at a time. Take it one day at a time. And that's what, it's always going to be a learning for me. My biggest weakness really is not being able to just calm down and appreciate the moment. And to your point, looking back, I've made it, honestly, in this Thanksgiving week, try to look back and go, oh, wow, and we're not even there yet. We're not even there yet. But my husband and I were able to go on a 2-week vacation in October for our 15-year wedding anniversary. And never in a million years, when I was 10 years old, the farthest we ever went was once a year to Gatlinburg, if we were lucky. Coming from where we came from, which I wanted for absolutely nothing. But looking back, how my family worked so hard.
You are blessed. I can tell that is, and that's a joy. That's so great that you realize that, because that makes the stress of the day worthwhile. And,
Sorry, I'm getting sorry, getting a
no,
little teary-eyed, but you're making
that
me
is,
actually think back when I just don't do that often. So
yeah. And I thought what you had mentioned to me, which I thought was so great. Can you tell me what gets you out of bed every day?
mm,
What's the joy of that gets you started?
you know, I love, honestly, first of all, I love my job. I love my job. And, I'm still learning every single day. I've been there over 4 years. I've been really fortunate that the leaders of TPAC, they are different than the leaders of the Y, but they are the same type of leader that is visionary, that you could get behind, and they really do invest in the people that invest in them. So they don't give you lip service, as a lot of, I think, leaders can do, to kind of placate you. And they say less, which I'm used to those affirmative words, right? But they do. And they've put forth that effort in me, and it gets me up every morning to really want to achieve, and to know that the exciting right now in my place in my life with TPAC, their future. I don't know if Clarksville catches a lot of wind, but we've got some really exciting plans going on, that I really want to be a part of. And the potential for possibly a new TPAC would be phenomenal. And that's really a legacy type of project that you would want to be part of. And the direction of which TPAC is going with their programming, there's a new arts access initiative that we have launched this last year. And that was really a big piece because Amazon provided that seed money and a partnership that was just kind of transformational. There's so much going on that it gets me up every morning, job wise, for sure.
Yeah. And I'm excited for you that you get to be a part of that, because as you said, we're seeing, I think, the arts come back alive. And the way that you in your group have made sure to not just connect to people that can enjoy the arts, but the entire community, people of all sections of society can be engaged with the arts.
Thank you so much for saying that. And that's the passion point for me. I think, that's the beauty, I think, of the performing arts and the arts in general, is there's so many ways you can really connect with them. If it's, I've recently met people who, because we are launching an international dance series that's going to be phenomenal. Side note, they're the Scottish Ballet. They are like top notch in the world coming. I'm not a dance enthusiast, never have been, but I've started to watch dance more, right? Because that's kind of part of my job. And I've fallen in love with it. The Crucible, the Scottish Ballet is performing the Crucible, which is obviously, I fell in love with the Crucible when I was a junior in high school. I cannot wait to see how they translate it on stage. But my point is, I've seen people where their passion is dance for different reasons. We actually have a staff member that she has a very, very personal reason of why. She was a professional dancer, but she has a very personal reason of why dance meant so much to her. For me, it's the access piece. Just kind of knowing my own journey of how, that little window of theater at the Roxy in Clarksville really was a sticking point for me. And so being able to work hard every day to be able to open that door of opportunity for people, and seeing how it can transform a life in so many different ways, and also impact our community in different ways, the fabric of who we are, and then also just even in economically how we impact. It's amazing. And honestly, we just recently met with you, and our Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer about partnering with internships. And that's a new program that was launched because of these arts access initiatives. So I love seeing us get outside of our walls and get outside of just downtown Nashville proper. Our patron base is, it spreads pretty wide, but I know we want to go broader, and being able to have these true relationships. And I owe my relationship with Austin Peay and my time at Austin Peay as a way that was able to quickly plug in to TPAC. And, I see how all of that kind of comes back around.
Yeah. And thank you for doing that, by the way. That's just awesome.
Thank you for meeting with us.
Well, Diana, we appreciate all the that you've shared with us. The last thing that we always ask people is sort of recommendations that you might have for students that are, within the college, within maybe an English major. What kind of encouragement may you have for them?
First of all, I mean, you are in a wonderful university. I'm not just saying that because I graduated there. I would not be on this podcast if I did not believe it. I would say, first of all, I think I've said this before, you have to enjoy the classes. I know that's not like your number one possibly, but you're missing out because that's where you get to spend quality time in your own mind thinking and being able to ponder. You've got everything else going on, buzzing around. There's so many different activities and on campus is wonderful campus life at Austin Peay. But if you start getting into your major, really, really pick those professors' brains, ask to meet with them. They did with me. I actually, another side note, after graduating, I wanted to be a professor. Like I was like, I'm going to go back to school, and I know this isn't going to be a long journey, but this is what I'm going to do. I didn't do it, but point is, I still have that love for it. Get involved. I grew up in Clarksville. I did not stay on campus. No, my husband, he did. And he enjoyed the whole full-blown thing, but I felt like I got the full-blown Austin Peay experience because I got very involved. I loved being on campus. So everything that intrigues you, inspires you, please enjoy it. Do it. And have fun. I mean, have fun in the best way. You really should. And just really kind of soak in this time, I guess you would say, and be proud of where you are now and where you're going to be in 5, 6, 10 years. I can't believe how freaking fast it's gone. I cannot believe how old I am now. I can't believe it. And it's just starting. I mean, I feel like I've still got, so much time to go. Okay, well, I'm not going to sit on my laurels now. So now what? I'm ready for the next thing.
That's right. And not only, as I said, I'm excited for your future. I think it's just great to talk with you and to hear, because you're a humble person, but you also provide acknowledgement to all the people. You're one of those few people that said, I see how you've impacted my life, to your siblings, to your mom and dad, to your teachers, even at high school and along the way. And they all are going to enjoy your success. And so thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And I should do it much more often. And that is the truth. But it's been a true honor to be asked to be on this podcast. And I think it's wonderful that you're doing this. I think it's such a cool idea. I wish we had this when I was here. When I was at Austin Peay, just to be able to kind of see people that, that are not horribly far removed from their college years, that we can still reflect back on it and hopefully provide some relevant advice and experience. And this is really neat. So kudos to you to even launch this.
Well, thanks again for being on the podcast, and make sure to, for all of you out there, to our viewers and listeners, make sure to continue to watch. We hope that you will join us next time as we continue to profile some of the outstanding alumni we have here in the College of Arts and Letters at Austin Peay State University. So until next time, stay safe, take care, and God bless.